Well, hey, Jonay. Welcome.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's awesome to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to get started, and I wanted to go ahead and get started with a really big question, like we talked about, to go ahead and kind of get something in there right from the start that people can feel like they're coming away with something right away. A lot of people like to get distracted by your story. I don't like any of that. I want to get jump in there. So I do. I like to get right in it.
You're like,
Um,
you're like, girl, skip all the introduction. They don't even need to know who you
yeah,
are. Like, I
well,
just want to get to the story.
and I'll let you tell something about yourself in a minute, but we'll start big. We'll start strong.
No, I love it.
So, artists have a lot of problems with copyright, and I wanted to know, how do you suggest that people protect their images when they're posting images of their stuff online, of their paintings and stuff online? How do they protect that from copyright violation?
Okay, so there are several things that you can do, but before we jump right into that, I just need to do a little disclaimer that everything that you hear on this interview does not take the place of you actually seeking an attorney to speak with you about your own specific legal matters. So this interview does not create an attorney-client relationship with you and I. It's just for information purposes only. So I have to kind of do that little legal stuff right at the beginning of my interviews.
Yep, yep.
Um, so the way that you can protect your work, internet is rampant. It's crazy. You know, people see stuff online. They take it. I've seen cases where people have created derivative works from the work that they found online via their various different online searches and image, Googling and things like that. The only things that you can really do there, number one, you need to make sure that you own the copyright for all of your work. That's really important. And it's not because you don't. In the United States, the minute that you create something in a fixed intangible form, it's copywritten by law. However, if you come up to a situation where you have some type of infringement, to have it registered with the U.S. Copyright Office is that extra assurance and protection, showing that you actually own the work, and it's not that expensive to do. It's about, I think at this point it's like $35 to register one thing. It's very, very small amount of money considering how much litigation could actually cost.
Mm-hmm.
So what you want to do is you want to make sure that you register your work. Number two is if you put things out online, the easiest way to make sure that people can't infringe upon it is to put a watermark over it. So some type of some like a logo, in your background or something like that, something that doesn't obstruct the image from people seeing what it actually is, but it makes sure that people can't take it and create some other type of work from it because it has that watermark on top of it. The third thing that you can do is when you own the copyright and you see somebody infringing upon it, then, the one thing that you can do is send them a takedown notice, which is basically saying, hey, this is my work. I see you're doing this. You haven't licensed it. You're required by law to take it down. So those are a couple ways that you can do it. But obviously there's no, 100% full way to prevent people from, infringing on your copyrights and on your work. It happens all the time. But those are just ways that you can maybe work to circumvent that from happening.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's probably not so bad when it does happen, as people think. It's bad if a big corporation gets a hold of your design, or something like that. But when it's small, it seems like it doesn't harm you as much as it harms your ego.
Yeah, I totally understand that. And obviously it's your work, it's your baby, it's something that you've created, that birthed through your own creative juices and whatnot. So yeah, obviously you're going to be, upset if somebody takes it and then they do something with it. But I remember watching an interview with Erykah Badu, and she said somebody asked her in the audience, she was at Red Bull Music Academy, and they asked her, well, how do you feel when people take your music and they create like other songs from it, they sample it, they do this and they do that with it? And she basically said, well, she was like, once I create the music, it doesn't belong to me anymore. She was like, it belongs to the world. she was like, so she was like, I don't make money off of recorded music, anymore. So she was like, I just, I create it and I release it. And she was like, and I like seeing what people do to it and variations that they create with it and things like that. And I mean, obviously she's at a certain level where she makes her money off of, live shows and things like that. So, she doesn't really have to worry about it too much. But it was just an interesting take, seeing somebody at such a high level with such a large amount of exposure saying, okay, once I create it, I put it out there, and, whomever it is that consumes it and they reinterpret it as whatever it is that they see it to be or deem it to be, it no longer belongs to me anymore. And I'm sure at the same time she owns her copyrights, but you know what I mean.
Right. But I love the perspective. It makes you don't take it so hard when you're thinking of it like that. Like you're putting something out into the world instead of, I own this little baby.
Yeah, it's mine. Like she has more of an expansive view of how she puts her art out into the world, and obviously there's some bias there because she can afford to do that because she's at a certain level and a certain income level, and she's been in the world for a certain amount of time. So at an independent artist level, it's a little harder to do. But at the same time, more exposure isn't necessarily bad. I mean, this happened with Shepard Fairey. He took an image off of line that he didn't license, and he took it and he created a derivative work from it, which ended up being the Obama Hope picture. Yeah. So he took that image that he found online, created that poster, and then he was subjected to a copyright infringement issue because the photographer that took that picture said, hey, this is my picture and you didn't properly license it. So it ended up being this huge case, but it ended up getting him a ton of exposure for his work. And now people are like Shepard Fairey fans before they didn't even know who he was before that happened, and now he's created this, this major exposure on this national scale just based off of a infringement case that he himself created. So, and I'm not saying go that route, obviously, but I'm just saying like, it was just interesting to see that level brought him so much more income and exposure just because of something very, very small. He wasn't thinking, and he didn't do his due diligence to find out where the image came from. And then he ended up going off and, creating this work, and then it ended up biting him in the butt. So, you just want to make sure that you take the requisite steps to protect it as much as possible.
Yeah. Okay. Well, now that we've gotten right into it, I think we can take a step back and we can talk about who you are. I mean, I'd love if you would kind of give us a little background on you and let us know what you do.
Absolutely. Well, my name is Johnny Williams. I am an entertainment and business attorney. I have a practice that's based in New York, and it's called J.A. Williams Law, the Artist Empowerment Firm. You can find it at jawilliamslaw.com. It is a firm that's primarily centered around empowering and helping artists create long-term success through making sure that they have a proper legal foundation and that they continue to use the law to help empower their career versus harm it in cases like what I just talked about in terms of infringement. So I work with various different types of artists, whether they're visual artists or musicians or writers or authors or whomever. And I just teach them what specifically they need to know about running their business, because if you are an independent artist and you don't belong to a label and you don't belong to your work doesn't belong with exclusive gallery or anything like that, you're an independent artist. And so that means you're an entrepreneur. So I teach artists how to be successful in being an entrepreneur by using the law to empower their career. And that is something that I'm deeply committed to. I was disempowered myself as a young artist. I was a vocalist, and I created I created songs and lyrics, and I was performing and doing all of these things, and I wasn't credited or compensated for my work. And this was a long time ago when I was too young to really understand how to protect myself. And it kind of took me on a journey of just empowering others. And so I've been in the entertainment industry for my entire life. I started off as a vocalist, and I was an event producer with my own company for 11 years. I've also been a manager. Now I'm a business coach for musicians primarily, and I'm also an attorney for, all artists as well. So there are various different iterations that my career has taken, but they've all been centered around empowering artists and helping them understand how to be effective entrepreneurs and create sustainable income.
Yeah, I love how you use the law not like as a scare tactic or anything. It's about empowerment.
Yes,
I
absolutely.
think that's really something that is unique
Hmm.
in the art world, in all the arts really. I
Thank you.
think that usually legal is very scary. I think it's presented
Yeah.
as it's scary, and it's not.
Yeah.
You know.
It's just like any other type of, skill or any other type of, area that you've never ventured into. I mean, if you've never bungee jumped, then yeah, it might be a little scary, but if you do it a couple times and you realize, hey, that wasn't so bad. It was actually kind of fun. And
Yeah.
I'm like, so, it's the same kind of idea. Like you just, once it seems big and it seems massive, but if you have somebody that can kind of help you and walk you through the process, it's just like learning how to swim. You just got to have a good teacher. That's what
Hmm.
lawyers are. They're just teaching you how to use the law to help you versus harm your career.
That's
So
fantastic. I love that.
thank you.
So I wanted to ask you, when a visual artist, especially, but really any artist, opens their business, like right from the start, what are the things that they probably need to do to make sure that right from the beginning they're operating legally?
Well, there are a couple of things that an artist should consider it depends on what journey they plan on taking. So if you plan on being an artist that primarily distributes your work independently, then you probably should set up a business entity like a LLC or a corporation, or in some states an S corp. It just depends on where you plan on going with your career. If you're someone who decides that, hey, I really just want to get in somewhere else, and become like, an artist that is primarily working with a certain gallery, or working in
Hmm.
a certain space where you're being commissioned and you're the only person that's solely working for them, then yeah, it might be a different structure. But for most artists, it's releasing and selling your work independently. And if that's the case, then you should set up a business entity and make sure that you have contracts that are available, that are service agreements, or agreements for your goods and services. So if you were a musician, for example, and you are somebody that goes out and you perform, most of the time you're going to have the venues that you perform in, they're going to have their own agreements for you to sign. But sometimes they don't. And the best way for you to make sure that you're legally protected is to have your own service agreement available, your performance agreement, and make sure that every time you book a show, that they're either signing that agreement, or you're having an attorney look at their agreements. So
Hmm.
they're either signing yours, or you're having somebody on your team look at what they're requiring you to sign to perform in their space. And if you're a visual artist, it's the same type of thing. If you get a gallery who's interested in your work, and they're obviously going to want you to sign a contract with them to work
Hmm.
with them exclusively for 50% of, the income that comes from the selling of your work. And you want to make sure that you have an attorney look at those things. So primarily making sure that you have some type of contract that's malleable, that you can use with various different venues and things like that, or
Hmm.
with different avenues where you're going to be putting your work. And you want to make sure that you have a business entity so that you can properly report the income and receive the tax benefits that come along with having,
Hmm.
an established entity. And also make sure that you have liability protection. And that's what an entity does. It basically puts a barrier between what you own personally and what your business owns, because your business is the one that will get into the contract with whomever it is that you're working with. So it's a way to just basically like protect your personal assets from the liability that comes with you putting your work out in the world. So, those are multiple ways that you can establish a proper business foundation from the very beginning. And when you decide that you want to grow and maybe have your own space that you lease out, or whatever other type of what do you call it, income streams that you want to have, then obviously those are separate agreements that you would have to have drafted and get into with whomever it is that you're deciding to work with at that time.
Okay, so do you think that no, that makes sense.
Okay.
Do you think that it would be smart to go ahead from the beginning and look into copyrights and trademarks for your business?
Absolutely. I think that the most important thing for an artist who's putting their work out in the world is to make sure that you have it copywritten. I think that that's one of the major things that you need to do, because if you don't do that, then it's not that you don't have rights to the work, because again, you own a copyright as soon as you create the work in a fixed and tangible form when you're in the United States. It works differently outside of our borders, but in the United States, that's how it works. But you want to just take that extra step to make sure that you have the paperwork that says this is mine and I own it. So that's a major thing that you want to do. As far as trademarking is just for your audience general purposes. Most people know what copywriting is, but trademark has to do with words and phrases. So, and also logos. So if you want to make sure that you own a particular phrase, or you've created a word that is, unique to you, and you're using it out in commerce and receiving money for it, then that's the way that you can use trademark to help you and insulate yourself from that word, insulate people from using that word and infringing on that word and taking it and using it and adopting it as their own. Or if it's a phrase, it's the same type of thing. If you create a great slogan, like, for example, only thing I can think of that's coming to me right now is like Calgon, take me away. Mm-hmm. That is something that they trademarked. So it's something that we can't use and say that that's now our slogan. You can't say like, Laura, take me away. Like, no.
Yeah, so, awesome catchphrase.
Yes. or a really creative name that you came up with for your business, or again, like the logo on the little apple on the back of your MacBook. Like those are all things that can be trademarked. But when you think of trademark, you want to consider, okay, what is it that I want to license? Because if you're not at the stage of licensing something or creating, like, for example, clothing, if you want to have clothing that has logos on it, or if you want to use your trademarked name because other people want to put it on their stuff. They want to use, they're like, oh, wow, that's a really cool, art piece, or that's a really cool logo. I want to use it to, to put out in the world and put on shirts and put on merchandise and things like that. Then trademark becomes really useful because you can license it and create another revenue stream for yourself.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So it just, so if you're not at that stage where you want to leverage it to create another revenue stream, then it might not be as helpful as creating and making sure that you have your trademark. And in a sense, if you decide that you have a really, really great name for your business and you're just like, this is the bee's knees, this is my name, it's awesome, I'm totally taking this to the next level, I'm about to be the next Jay-Z. Like, if that's where you're trying to go, then absolutely, you want to trademark that name because it's something that's really important. For example, I don't plan on changing the name of my firm. It will always be the Artist Empowerment Firm. So I trademarked it and made sure that no other attorney can call their firm the Artist Empowerment Firm. Mm-hmm. So, those are the type of things you want to consider with trademark, but you definitely want to make sure that you have a business entity, that you copyright your work, and that you have proper contracts and agreements in place.
Okay, yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of that stuff that we don't think of, especially business entities and copywriting and Actually, the contracts, really. I wouldn't have thought of the contracts. You're smart.
You're like, we haven't thought about any of this. No, but it's okay. And that's the reason why you want to come and see an attorney and say, hey, this is what I'm doing, right? And this is the revenue streams that I have. This is where I want to grow. What do I need to do now? And that's basically what you would do when you sit down with an attorney. They would help you to say, okay, this is what you have coming in. These are your revenue streams. This is what you plan on doing. This is what I recommend legally that you protect yourself in this type of way. So
it's important that that when you start out that you talk to an attorney.
I think that it's very important that you sit down and talk to an attorney. But most of the time, what happens with artists that I've experienced in my coaching practice, and I'm sure that you've experienced it in your coaching practice as well, is that most artists don't necessarily know where it is that they want to go. They're like, I'm in the moment, I'm creating, I'm putting this work out, and they're not thinking about, okay, I'm putting this out, but what is the end goal? What is it that I want to accomplish and achieve in this world? Outside of making money, what is it that I'm trying to do? So, if you have a business coach, they can help you decide, okay, what specifically do I want to do and what's my vision? And the attorney, what they're going to do is they're going to sit down with you and they're going to help you understand how to protect that vision. How are you going to create other revenue streams for yourself based on that vision? Like, how are you going to take everything to the next level based on that vision? And in the immediate moment right now, how are you going to protect what it is that you're trying to cultivate and create so that you can get to that vision? So it's like we work in tandem with you to kind of get you to that goal and protect you along the way, because laws are in place for a reason. You're going to owe taxes. You're going to be exposed to liability. You might face infringement. These are things that are real serious legal issues, and you want to make sure that you sit down with someone and tell them what it is that you want to do, not so that they can kill your vision, but they can ensure that you get to it the right way.
Like you say, empower. It empowers you.
Exactly. Empower you. So
so I think that people tend to, especially visual artists who are selling a lot at fairs and in galleries and stuff, I think that they tend to not think of their selling as a business. But you're making this point that even if you don't necessarily hire a full-time attorney, you can go consult with an attorney, make sure that you're operating like a business, even if it scares you, because you don't want to get in the hot water of the legal issues.
You really don't. And the thing, when you are working, when you're selling your work, for example, you're a vendor, I want your audience to understand that every time you are selling your goods or you're selling your services and someone's paying for them, you're creating a contract with them. Whether you decide that you want to or not, because when you create a good and then someone purchases that good, then with that good comes a set of laws, like, a warranty of merchantability, or making sure that it's fit for the purpose that they purchased it for. These are things that are created when you take that money and give them that good. So if they come back and they say, hey, you gave me this bracelet, but now, I put it on my arm and it fell apart. You just breached your contract with them, in a sense.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, so that's what it is. So you want to make sure that that you set out all the terms and conditions before you start to get into these agreements with people, and that's what's happening every time you sell your goods. So when you think about the way that it works in the world, in a visual world, in a sense, when you sell things and then you have you create invoices and then they pay you, that's all an agreement. You can't sell somebody a picture and then they put it on their wall and then it just crumbles to pieces. They're going to want a refund. you know? And what are you going to say? Like, sorry, I gave it to you and, I didn't guarantee you anything. I didn't
Yeah.
guarantee you that you would actually be able to use it for the purpose I sold it to you for.
Right.
So I just want artists to understand that that's what happens when you think about putting your goods and services out in the world. And I'm sure that you, as a business coach, when somebody comes and signs up to work with you, then they have to sign an agreement that says, I'm providing you this service. You're paying me this amount. This is, this is what's going to happen if we get into a dispute, X, Y, Z. And it's the same thing when you're selling goods. It's the same type of idea. It's just structured a little differently, because most of the time it's a nonverbal agreement, because every time you sell a piece of jewelry, you don't write down, okay, this is a contract.
Sign this piece of paper.
Yeah, no, you don't do that. But it's the same type of idea. There's a set of laws that come with that goods or service when you put it out in the world and you make money off of it. So
okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I wanted to go ahead and give people some expectations of when they do go to consult with an attorney. What kind of range of cost can they expect? So they can be prepared for it.
Well, it depends on the attorney, really, and it depends on the firm. That's not necessarily a question that I could answer and give any justice to, because there are attorneys that, charge very, very little. There are attorneys that charge a lot. Like, I know attorneys that charge $1,000 an hour, and I know attorneys that charge $200 an hour. So it just depends on who you go to, their level of experience, and how it is that they actually charge. For me, because I work with mostly independent artists, is most of the time I charge flat rates, and it really just depends on the service. So I couldn't really give you a, this is what it's going to be, because it really depends on, when you come into my world, what it is that you need. So I sit down with you and I assess, okay, what it is that you're doing and what is it that you need. And then we find a middle ground as to how much it's going to cost you. And I'm always a flat rate, just because I know how it is for artists. Like, you don't want to have sticker shock. You don't want to have surprise about certain things. And that deters people from wanting to work with a lawyer, because they don't know what they're going to get at the end of the day. Like, they don't know how much it's going to cost them. So I'm very, very transparent and upfront. And I do know some lawyers are like that, where they create flat fees. So it's just a matter of meeting somebody that you're attracted to as an attorney, and then asking them, what's your pay structure? How is it set up? And how is it that we can figure out a way to work together?
So how do you know if you're finding a good attorney?
I think that the best way that you can check out attorneys is, number one, through referral. I think that that's always a good way, because, if you're good, the word travels fast, right? And also checking out their testimonials is very important, like seeing if they have happy clients, people that love them and use their services over and over again. Aveo, I don't know how you pronounce it, but avvo.com is another place where you can check out attorneys. They have ratings on there, and it shows if they're respected by their peers, or if some of their clients really like their services. It's not a hugely popular service, so it's not something that you can rely on solely, because depending on your level of interactivity with the service, your ratings go up. So if you're answering lots of questions and you're being really helpful, then it might go up. If you were off for a month, it might go down. But you just it's a good way to kind of get a pool of attorneys that you can take a look at and see who you might be interested in, and then you can take the investigation farther by looking them up online, and and asking maybe even asking if they have testimonials, some of their clients, about the service. And just emailing them and saying, hey, what do you think about this? I had someone who was thinking about working with me. He went onto my testimonial site, and he emailed all of my clients that were musicians, because he was a musician, and he asked them all what they felt about me, or he was like, hey, I'm considering working with her. What do you feel, or how was your experience with her? And even though at the time I was like, he did what? Because because all my clients were emailing me like, yeah, I got an email from this guy. But at the same time, I mean, he was doing his investigation, so I couldn't be mad at him for that. You know what I
Right.
mean? It's like, hey, I would probably do the same thing if I wanted to buy a product. Like, hey, Laura, did you tried this lotion? Like, how was this lotion? Like, was it good? Did you like it? You know what I mean? So those are ways that you can find a really good attorney. And I would say that most attorneys that I've come across in the entertainment world, most of the time they're very generous. So they put a lot of information out online for artists, especially if they work for independent ones. So, if you're checking out their information, they're putting out really great info and you're really enjoying it and they're being really helpful and they're not saying, hey, by the way, this blog cost you $500. If they're not doing that, then, they might be somebody reputable that you might want to check out.
Mm-hmm. So when you're looking for your lawyer, what would you Google, I guess I would say? Like, you're not going to Google personal injury attorney. Like, what would be an appropriate kind of lawyer?
You could do various different searches. I don't know, honestly, and it's funny that you asked this because I don't know how people find me outside of social media because I get so many inquiries and clients coming just from social media just because I put out so much information online to help artists. And so I think that they just do searches for like, New York entertainment attorney woman, or they might do something like business lawyer for artists in New York, that kind of thing. And so that's, and then they get whoever it is that shows up on the top end on Google, and then they just start looking at them, investigating them. So I think that, or you could, if you have a specific legal issue, like, copyrighting your musical work, in New York entertainment attorney, like just putting like a bunch of those little words in there, it'll kind of bring up people, or it'll bring up blogs that maybe attorneys have commented on, or they've written something about this particular thing. I write on CD Baby and Reverb Nation all the time. So when people go to those blogs and they do a search for like legal things, then usually I'll come up as one of the attorneys that has, put out work about that. And then I get inquiries from there as well. So it just depends, what your search capabilities are and how savvy you are. But if you do some of those kind of searches and do them locally, you'll be able to find it. But I would say look up various legal issues, look up general search words for people in your state, and then just try to see what you find from there, and then just take it a step farther and just investigate a little more.
That's something we haven't touched on, that it's important to stay with somebody in your state.
Yeah, it depends, because it's not necessarily important to stay with someone in your state when you're having to do with copyright and trademark, because those are federal laws. So you can work with anyone at, if whomever it is that you decide, if they do those kinds of things, like if they do copyright registrations and trademarks, then yeah, those are people that you can work with, because they're federal laws. If it has to do with contracts, it also depends on whether the contract itself that you want the attorney to work on is going to be related to the state where they're licensed, or you need representation in that, like you're going to be, for example, you're an artist that lives in Ohio and you're going to be commissioned to do a work in New York. Then that's something that you would probably want a New York attorney to work on for you. So it really just depends on that's why it's so important for you to talk to somebody specifically on your legal matters, and they can assess whether they'll be able to work for you or not. I have drafted contracts for people all over the world. Like I just had a Japanese publish agreement coming from an Australian manager for, she's hiring me as a New York lawyer. Like it just depends on, what the situation is and what the contract might be. Yeah. So, I've worked on contracts that weren't based on, they weren't based in New York, or they weren't in the New York jurisdiction, but they were agreements. I help online entrepreneurs with that all the time. But obviously, if something happened with that contract, I wouldn't be able to just jump into that state and go defend them in court. So it would be something where I would either have to get another attorney that is licensed in that state to work with me, or I would have to waive in or whatever the requirement is in that state for those types of things. But it just depends, you know. So it really is important for you to go and seek out an attorney and then say to them, you know, hey, this is what I have. Can you work on it? And they might be able to assess that, you know. And some attorneys have licensed in various different states, you know, so it really just depends on who it is that you want to work with.
Okay. That makes more sense. So I did want to make sure I got to this question because somebody asked this and it seemed like something that a lot of people would be confused about. Do attorneys help you decide like what paperwork you would file with taxes, or is that something you need to hire an accountant for?
Well, yes and no. With attorneys, if you are working with a tax attorney, then they're definitely going to help you because they know the tax laws and they'll be able to tell you what paperwork that you need. If you're working with a business attorney, they're going to tell you what you need to file to keep your business entity going and keep it proper, and they will probably tell you what you need to look for and how to evaluate what would be the best business entity for you based on your personal situation. But the best combination that I found to be the most effective is when you meet with a business attorney and they can talk about your business and address the issues that are, you know, for liability purposes, like what could come up in terms of liability. And they can decide for you what would be the best in that regard. And they can talk to you about, okay, you know, you have this much exposure and it's this much risk. So we would go with this. And based off of how savvy you are, you know, this is what you're going to have to file every year. This is how much it's going to cost every year. Are you okay with that? And then they can, you know, come up with something from that regard. You would probably be, once you know that, go to an accountant, and then you can talk about what your personal income situation is and what entity would be better for you based off of your personal tax rate and what the corporate tax rate would be if you decided to go that route. So they would be better to assess how much is going to cost you in taxes in terms of what your rate is going to be. And then the business attorney will be able to help you in terms of understanding what the liability and the requirements are for filing.
Okay, so they couple really well together.
Yes. Yes, I would say that they're the power combo if you want to start a business.
Combo. I love it.
I keep an attorney on my team, and I have I keep an accountant on my team, and I have other accountants that I speak to as well. So it just, you know, you just want to make sure that you you have those two working together to make sure that you're protected.
I love it.
Yeah.
Is there anything that artists tend to do when they're building their businesses that's like, this does not work?
Give me an example. What do you mean?
I was just thinking, like, is there, when they're starting out, is there like if they draft a contract?
No, don't do that
themselves. Yes, you knew where I was going with this.
Don't do that. Don't do that. No. Don't take things offline. See, I'm glad that you clarified this. Do not take contracts offline and just take them and go, okay, I'll just fill in my name here. No. If you do take a contract off of line or you take it off of somewhere else, then what you need to do is make sure that you send it to an attorney and have them look at it and edit it and draft it and make sure that it's specific to your business and what you're doing. Okay. Mm-hmm. That's a way to save money. You know, so that an attorney doesn't have to draft it from scratch because that will cost more. But just don't take it bare bones and then just go out into the world using that stuff because you're not going to be protected. And it's very dangerous to do that because you might be exposing yourself to things that you shouldn't be exposing yourself to. And you haven't had an attorney look at it and say, okay, this is what needs to be in here. This is what doesn't need to be in here. So, I would say make sure that you do that. Do not draft any contracts yourself. You're not an attorney and you don't know what you're doing. And that is okay that you don't know what you're doing. Just have somebody trusted on your team. It's not like bad artists. Don't do that. It's more It's more like,
Exactly.
you just want to make sure that you have the highest level of protection. Like, I wouldn't go to a musician to get a piece of artwork created, a visual artwork created, if they're not an artist,
Right.
So you just want to make sure that you go to the right professional to ensure that you're protected. Other bad practices is just taking photos offline without finding out who owns those photos.
That's a
The
big one.
safest thing you can do is find stock photos, but like most artists understand, most stock photos suck and they're kind of cheesy. You can find some good ones every once in a while, but most of the time they're not that great. So if you find a great photo online that you want to use to create some type of, original art piece, which would be called a derivative work, then you need to find out where that picture came from and get the proper license for that picture. Other bad practice: if you're a musician, do not take samples without finding where those samples came from and properly licensing those samples before you create your music. Don't do that. Trying to think, is there anything else that I would say? No.
You need to record yourself doing that and then just play it at the beginning of the conversation.
I'll like make a recording and just give it to your whole audience, and every time you're thinking of doing something, just no. But yeah, those are standard bad practices, I would say. And also you really just want to make sure, and I mean, people get into these type of issues all the time, especially when they're doing like cover songs on YouTube and stuff like that. Like sometimes, issues can happen around that as well. It just depends on, the company, and you will end up getting like takedown notices saying you can't perform this and that type of thing. So there are various different ways that you can infringe, but I would say the most important thing is making sure that you have you're knowing where your samples and where your photos and where certain things online are coming from, and getting the proper samples for it. And even with, just side note, the Shepard Fairey case, it turned out that picture was owned by the Associated Press, and he literally only had to pay $20 for it. If he wanted to properly license that photo, all he had to do was pay the Associated Press $20. And several thousands of dollars later, that was the lesson he learned.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of just doing your due diligence, making sure that you know where things are coming from, and making sure you have the proper license to use them is the most important thing.
Yeah. That's crazy. I had forgotten about that case, but that's totally crazy how that... Yeah. And he was probably not even thinking about it. He was just like, oh, I'm just drawn from a photo.
Yeah, exactly. He wasn't thinking about it. He was just thinking like, oh, this is a cool photo, and I'm going to create, something from it. And, he created something that ended up being a nationally recognized iconic piece. And obviously the photographer that took the photo was like, wait a minute, hold up. That looks like something I took.
Yep. That's my photo.
Yeah, that's my photo. What are you doing? And then, and it ended up badly because of the fact that, Shepard tried to say that he used a different work than the original photo that the other guy was claiming that he used, and then he eventually admitted that he lied, that he actually did use the photo that the guy thought he used, and that we all knew that he used, and so it just ended up being this big thing. But the bottom line is that he literally could have paid $20 to the Associated Press and got the rights to the photo, and we wouldn't even have a case. Yep. But it was very good. It was a very good lesson. And you just want to make sure that you don't have some type of horror story like that happening. Because if you want to get to a high level and you want to be an incredible artist, you never know where your work is going to end up. And you never know whose hands it's going to, cross. And you want to make sure that, you're doing the right things to protect yourself from the very beginning.
Yep. Well, it looks like that is all the questions that I definitely wanted to make sure we got to.
Awesome.
I wanted to give you a chance, though, if there was anything else that you wanted to make sure that you touched on. I know sometimes there's like something in the back of your head going, wait, I want to talk about this.
You're right, one more thing. Basically, I think that the most important thing that I just want to touch on is that the law doesn't have to be scary. And it's is much more empowering. Just like when you finally get your finances together and you start looking at, your bank statements and things like that. It's scary at first, but when you actually take the bull by the horns, you actually feel more empowered. You feel more confident about what you're doing, and it creates a certain amount of freedom for you. And that's the one thing that people don't understand is when you know that you're protected, when you know that you're doing the right things and you're not kind of floating out there, then you feel a sense of freedom to be able to create and do things even to a larger scale and at a larger level. So I just want to encourage everyone in your tribe to go out there and seek out an attorney and at least have one consultation with them, just to understand what your risks are, what your exposure is, and how it is that you're going to move forward in a way that is going to empower you, not disempower you. So I would just say that would be my last thought, is to go find someone to talk to and just make sure that you're doing all the right things to protect yourself and your work, so that you can have that freedom to grow and create and just do what you were meant to do. And it's your responsibility as an entrepreneur, because that's what you are, to make sure that you are properly running your business, because your business is your art. If you're trying to make a sustainable income from it, it's your business. So you just want to make sure that you're doing the right things to put yourself in the best financial situation as possible and the best legal situation as possible.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that is a very good reminder for all of us, especially since we tend to not think to do that right from the beginning if we're bootstrapping,
Yeah.
So it's good to know that that's really important.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, you have to invest in your business if you want it to grow. So, the whole bootstrapping, starving artist thing, I don't go for it in my business. I don't go for it with my artists. I'm like, I don't care what you have to do. You make sure that you're investing and doing the proper things that are going to move you forward instead of hold you back. And that's what happens when you don't invest in your business. It starts to hold you back. And that is investing in yourself, investing in having a coach, investing in, your the foundations, the business and legal foundations for your business. These are things that you're just going to have to pull up your bootstraps and make sure that you take care of. And once you do that, then you're in a much better position to get to the next level, so that you don't have to look back and think that you're a starving artist anymore. So it's very important. And if anybody in your tribe wants to talk to me or anything and find out more information about me, they can just go to jwilliamslaw.com. And I send out emails every Friday. So if they want to know more business and legal information that's geared to an audience voice, geared to their voice, because it's my voice too. I was born an artist, so I speak that way. I don't always have on my attorney hat. So, if they're interested, then they can just find me there.
Perfect. Yeah, of course. And I'll make sure that goes in the show notes so everybody knows where to find you.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thanks for interviewing with me. This was really great.
No problem. I hope that it was helpful, and I hope that, your tribe, really they take this seriously and understand that it can cause them to create an incredible career for themselves, just getting themselves set up as entrepreneurs properly.
Yeah, I think that that's exactly right. You're totally right on point.
Thank you. It was so much fun. I enjoyed this.
Yeah, me too. It was really fun.
Yeah, totally. And hopefully, it'll help somebody.
Yes, it will. I know it will.
Awesome.
Well, I will talk to you again soon then.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye, Jonay.
Bye-bye.